Hi everyone, welcome to the Sip and Spin. I am the Tipsy Spinster, and today we are heading into the mountains. For those of you that have been following me this season, for this year's Tour de Fleece, I have been following along very closely with the riders of the Tour de France. And as I said, today they are heading into the mountains. Now, for mountain riding cyclists, it's more about strategy than just full out, flat on, fast racing. And so that got me thinking, in the fiber arts world, what's something that requires a little bit of strategy? Scouring fiber. And so I thought this would be a great show to go back and review some of the breeds from the Livestock Conservancy Shave 'em to Save 'em program, especially because they just added a new breed. Soya was just added to the threatened breed. And I remember a couple years ago when the Shave 'em to Save 'em program started, I was a little bit surprised that this breed was not already on one of the lists. Soya is a breed that originates in Scotland. It's one of the oldest sheep breeds, and what makes it unique is, one, it's a small breed sheep, and two, much like Shetland and Wiltshire Horn, I think those are the only two that rue. Soya is also a breed where the wool will rue or naturally shed off the sheep. They can either be shorn or you can wait for them to rue. And it's a unique characteristic. It's a characteristic that was inherent to a lot of original breed sheep because it was necessary. It is important to remember that sheep do need to be sheared annually, otherwise the wool gets too heavy and they do get too hot. So I am going to go through and talk about some of these breeds. For those of you that are interested in learning more about them, I did go into a lot more detail in my season 4. So that's where I really dove in and talked specifically about all of these breeds, washing them, etc., etc. For this episode, I'm just going to kind of pop through and talk about the characteristics, record keeping, which I alluded to in an earlier show, and walking through the process of working with Soya sheep. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the failures that I have had when it comes to scouring wool. Because scouring is a process that requires some pretty solid consideration and a clear mind, I have in my glass a new discovery. It is a non-alcoholic beer by Untitled Art out of Waunakee, Wisconsin. This is the Watermelon Ghost, and it's amazing. Now, yep, I absolutely could toss a little bit of rum in here if I wanted some libation, but I have to be 100% honest, all of the Untitled Art flavors that I've found have been completely amazing, full of flavor. Don't even know there isn't any alcohol in it because they're so flavorful. And it's nice. I don't drink soda, so I'm always looking for something that's just a little bit different. I do like seltzer, I do like flavored waters, but it's like beer, only different. And I can drink as much as I want, and I'm not going to get hammered. So I'm going to set this aside so I don't knock it over. For those of you that are interested in jumping in and becoming part of the Livestock Conservancy Shave 'em to Save 'em program, these little booklets are $15 and they can be found on the Shave 'em to Save 'em website. There are also some fiber providers that have the passports as well. Dolores with Fun with Fiber, I know, has them. I'm trying to think. That's the only one that I know of off the top of my head because I remember seeing it on her website. So you can either get it through Fun with Fiber, where you're also going to find some amazing fibers, or directly through the Livestock Conservancy website. And I will put both of those links down in my description for you. So I'm going to open this up so I can see the breeds that I'm talking about as I go through them. You'll also notice that I have I have a giant book and a smaller book. So the Fleece and Fiber Source book has over 200 breeds of sheep, their characteristics. This really is the Bible of sheep breeds. And if you know that you're going to really be diving in and spending a lot of time with breeds, I would highly recommend getting this book. I use it all the time. I use it a lot more than I ever thought I probably would, because when I first started spinning, I said, I am never going to wash sheep. Guess what? I wash wool all the time. A smaller version of it, this has 100 sheep breeds. This is a great pocket guide if you're out, if you're at a farm, if you want to look at sheep characteristics. It has a lot of the same information. It's talking about the main characteristics and then a little bit of history about each of the breeds. So both of these are really, really nice books to have in your library. Okay, let's jump in and start talking about the now 23 breeds in the Livestock Conservancy Shave 'em to Save 'em program. Before I jump in and get too far into it though, I want to talk a little bit about a book that you should also add to your fiber library, especially if you are going to be washing wool, whether you're going to wash one fleece or if you're just going to focus on these little 4-ounce samples. Mary of Kamaj Fiber Arts put together this book, The Art of Washing Wool, Mohair, and Alpaca, and I've said it before, I am repeating myself. It was a game changer for me, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. Prior to reading and learning Mary's book, Mary also offers courses as well. So if you want to go even further in, she offers classes and courses that you can take and work through that book as well. Before reading her book, I had done a little bit of research and I realized I needed a couple things in order to wash wool. I needed hot water, I needed soap of some kind, little agitation, and that's pretty much as far as I went. And I'm going to show you some of my results as we get in and get started. Feel free to laugh. So the first breed that I want to talk about, this is in the category of the critical breeds. This is Florida Cracker. This came to me as roving, and as you can see, it has an incredibly short staple length, and sheep that have very short staple lengths tend to hold vegetable matter. So this does have a lot of vegetable matter. It also has some interesting characteristic. It has some guard hairs in it. Now, even though this came to me as roving, it's perfectly ready just to spin, but I'm going to go through with my combs and I'm going to comb it one more time to remove some of these little pieces just to clean it up a little bit more before I start spinning it. The interesting thing with Florida Cracker, it reminds me a lot of California Red. California Red is a combination of Tunis and Barbados Black Belly. And I talked extensively about that in season 4 as well, because it is one of my favorite fibers. So that's Florida Cracker. The next one is Gulf Coast Native, and here is my first scouring fail. So if you look at the Gulf Coast Native raw lock, you can see this has a really nice staple length. This is probably about 2.5 to 3 inches, getting up here on the tips a little bit longer, but I am guessing, oh no, these tips don't come off. Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, these tips come off. A lot of these, the tips come off, and you'll want to do that before you scour. So it does have some smaller bits in there. The tips do come off. This is before reading Mary's book, this is what my lock looks like after I scoured it. It's got some of those little neps down there, but as you can see, it's significantly smaller than the original because I washed it in water that was way too hot and it really shrank. I mean, it still has some pull to it. It's a bouncy fiber anyway, but it did shrink. I also didn't do any of that prep or pre-planning, so it has tons of vegetable matter in it and a lot of neps. Does this mean that the wool is unusable? No, not at all. It just means that I made a lot of work for myself after the fact, and I will need to go through and comb all of this. I'll open it up with my hand a little bit, and as you can see, Some of the dirt and everything is falling out still. The lanolin is out, but it does still have quite a bit of vegetable matter in it. So I will be combing that. Next is Hog Island. Hog Island is probably, next to some of the hair breeds, one of the hardest breeds to get. It is not a hair breed at all. It's just a very rare breed. Here is a lock of the Hog Island. And this one does have, and you can actually see the break, and I've talked about this a little bit before. This one does break as well, so I will want to pull the tips off before I process it. Just like that. And that's not a bad thing. It just means maybe young sheep, diet change, weather, exposure to weather, just something to be aware of. Still a really solid lock. This is some that's already come to me ready to be spun. And this was some that, again, I tried to process before I knew what I was doing. And I didn't do any prep, and it's all neps. There's not a whole lot left on this because I washed it in water that was way too, basically I cooked it. I boiled this. And so it has all of these neps. If I wanted, it's very soft. If I wanted a tweed yarn, I could spin this. I do not want this to be a tweed yarn. So I will need to go through and comb the little bit that I have. Luckily, I have another 4 ounces. Now that I know what I'm doing when it comes to scouring, I will be able to scour it without cooking it down to basically garden mulch. And the last one in the critical breed is Santa Cruz. And this one I just have some roving. And it's beautiful. It's all ready to spin. It's super soft, has some spring to it, which is kind of nice. Reminds me a little bit of Southdown. I'm looking forward to spinning that one. Now moving into the huge category of the threatened breeds. We have Black Welsh Mountain, and a lot of these threatened breeds I've noticed have incredibly long staple lengths, which is kind of an interesting feature about this entire category or group. So very quickly, Black Welsh Mountain, this came to me already processed. Again, you can see it's very long, very soft. And Clune Forest, this is a lock of Clune Forest, and this is some that has already been processed. This I processed after reading Mary's book, and as you can see, it's clean, it's white, it's ready to be spun. Cotswold is very long. This Cotswold has very long, strong locks, and as you can see, it works up light and fluffy. I put this through the drum carder and it came out just absolutely beautiful. Dorset Horn. Dorset Horn is another one that you need to be careful with. I have 2 samples of raw locks of Dorset Horn because my first 4 ounces of Dorset Horn came back pretty much like this. I shrank all of it. I roached it. It basically fell apart after I washed it because I used water that was way too hot and I didn't have the appropriate scour, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. I used a wool wash, not a wool scour, and it ended very badly. Very, very badly. Next is Jacob. I think I've done quite a few shows on Jacob. Jacob is hands down my favorite breed of sheep. I love Jacob. You can get 3 colors, you can get a lilac. These are 2 locks from Rocky, and I will be working with Rocky extensively this year. Rocky is the sheep that I have decided to use primarily for those mountain days when I'm spinning on my wheel. So this is this year's Jacob, and I cannot wait to get in and get started working with Rocky. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that I get some of the blues. It's kind of neat. When you mix some of these browns and creams together, you almost get this lilac-y blue. The colors are just absolutely beautiful. Next is Caracal, which is American sheep. As you can see, some Caracals have incredibly long locks. They're long staple length, a lot of different colors in this particular sheep. It is a coarser sheep, so primarily for outerwear or rugs, which is in the industry, that's what it's primarily used for, is rug making. The Leicester long wool, another one of my favorites. The shine on this is just amazing. And these locks, these have already been washed. These came to me from Fun with Fiber. So that would be an excellent place to get some Leicester. It's just, it shines almost like mohair. It's so beautiful. And then we have Lincoln, very similar to the Leicester. So this is the Lincoln. Lincoln is a very strong fiber. And then next, Navajoero. I did a large episode on the Navajoero as well. This is a raw lock. I got most of my Navajoero from Willis, from one place that I'm completely drawing a blank on, but I was able to get all of the different colors. That's one of the neat things with the Navajoero sheep. It comes in so many different colors. Again, primarily, I want to say it's primarily for rug making or outerwear, but I've felt some that is so super soft. I think it just depends on the animal and where the animal is coming from, how it's raised. So those, again, those are great questions to ask if you're working directly with a farmer. Ask about what the best use for that fiber would be. Next is Ramadale, or California Variegated Mutant. It's soft. It reminds me a little bit of Jacob. I think this one reminds me a lot of Jacob. It's kind of got some spring to it. St. Croix, I've not done a lot with. Oh, Soya. Thank you, sis. The new one, this is the new one that's just been added to the Shave 'em to Save 'em list, and it's Soya, which I was floored that it had not been added originally, so I'm so glad to hear that it has been added this time. So there's the Soya, and this one, yes, the top, this little piece is definitely going to pop right off. I knew that was. That. Oftentimes, if you see that discoloration up at the top, chances are it's going to pop right off, and you'll want to do that before you scour it. Okay. Next up, we are looking at St. Croix, which it's a hair breed. St. Croix is going to be a hard one to find. As you can see, it's got all of those guard hairs in there, and if you dig in, you're going to be able to get a little bit of fiber out there. I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to do anything with the St. Croix that I have. I have it, I have the passport, I've looked at it, and I have decided that that's all I'm going to do with it. Next is our watch list, and the first one in the watch list is Barbados Black Belly, and this is one of my favorite breeds too. It's a hair sheep. It's considered a hair sheep, but if you get in and you can separate out, and I'll be combing this, if you can separate out the guard hairs, oh, there it is. Like the cream filling inside. If you can separate out the guard hairs, the down that's left over is so soft. It's just wonderful. So I'll probably be doing another in-depth episode on Barbados Black Belly because I really, really like that one. The next two, Oxford and Shropshire, are very, very, very similar. They're both fluffy. They're a little bit coarser. I think I over-processed this because I'm guessing this should be softer than it is. But they washed up beautifully, easy to scour, quick. These white sheep, I don't know what I'm going to do with those. They were the easiest to work with, that's for sure. Next is Tunis, which, like I said, if you put these two together, you get California Red. So Tunis is a nice long staple length. I just have a raw lock of that one. And then Wiltshire Horn, which I've also done a special feature on because it has quickly become one of my new favorites. I do like Wiltshire Horn a lot. And then the last two are Shetland and Southdown. And as you can see, the Shetland sample that I have, like I said, it roos or sheds. It's very similar to the Soya, which I thought was kind of neat. So that's something that breeds that naturally shed. They do have that in common, both very soft. Shetland is very soft. And then last but not least is Southdown. And these are both samples of processed Southdown, and I overprocessed it. I do have some more. As you can see, it shrank a little bit, but it's very, very stretchy. Southdown has boing factor, like a spring, which this came from a lamb called Jumper, which I thought was pretty funny because it is an incredibly springy fiber. Okay, so there is a rundown of all of the Shave 'em to Save 'em breeds. You can find, if you want to join the Facebook page, that's a wonderful place to connect with fiber sellers. You can also go to the Livestock Conservancy page and you can look up farmers and places to buy wool there. Today, I want to get in and spend a little bit of time processing some Soya because this is the second time I've worked with it. This time I'm going to do it correctly. So I have created a fiber journal page, and so this page is just for my records. I think it's really, really important to keep good records because that way if you run into fiber that has similar characteristics to one you've worked with before, you can go back and look at that. It's always good to reminisce and go back and take a look at your notes, see what you did correctly, maybe some of the things that you did incorrectly, the difference between combing and carding, etc., etc. So here is my Soya lock. And as you can see, it is a rich chocolate brown Soya. It originally came from Scotland. The characteristics I pulled directly from the Fleece to Fiber source book when I purchased it, where I purchased it from, and then I started to make my own notes. So because of the high lanolin, the wool really, really, really holds a lot of dirt, and it does. So I'm going to want to do a little bit of prep before it goes in the wash because it does have some dirt in it. Also, the lighter tips on these, the lighter tips do pull off. There are some really, really short pieces in there that I imagine are second cuts, which it happens, and I'm going to take those out as well. Anything that's shorter than that 2 to 4 inch staple length is going to come out. So the pieces that are going to pull right off. So I have those nice locks. So I've got 2 right there. I'm going to want to keep a record of that, and so I picked up an Instax. It's an instant camera, and it works really well for taking pictures to put in the source book as well, so I don't have a sticky piece of fiber attached to that, which is something that I've done in the past. So I like having the Polaroid there, and I want to bring this out, full disclosure, being honest. This was my first 4 ounces of Soya. I took all of it and I just dumped it into hot water and let it sit for a while. Didn't do any pre-prep. And as you can see, it is basically, there's nothing left. It's clean. There's definitely not any lanolin in it anymore, but it's completely falling apart in my hands. There's nothing left. So this is a perfect example of fiber that has been completely destroyed in the scouring process. There's nothing left to work with. And I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to grab my combs because there's no way I could card this. There's nothing there to even card, and it's falling apart down on the table. Give me just 1 second and I will show you what this looks like when it goes through some combs. So I grabbed my Louette mini combs and charged them with just a little bit. Yep, there's nothing to. So there's nothing left. I'm getting. So when I go to pull out, I'm still getting all. It basically looks the same. I'm getting all of the neps and everything in there as well. In my opinion, what I've done is I've created an unspinnable yarn. So this has 2 options. I have 2 options. It can either become the core to dryer balls, and I wouldn't even do that to a dryer ball, or it can become mulch for the garden. And it's clean, so that's exactly what it's going to become. It's going to become mulch because that's really all that it's good for. So that's a perfect example of what not to do to your fiber. So now let's take a look at scouring a small batch of fiber at home. Scouring does need a lot of water. Now the great thing is these 4-ounce samples, or these 4 ounces, something that can easily be done in the kitchen sink at home, especially if you have a garbage disposal. I would only recommend this if you have a garbage disposal. So the way that I have it set up, I found one of these baskets online on Amazon. It has holes in it. I really like using it, so I'm going to layer some of my fiber in there. I also have a salad spinner basket for washing as well. This is also good for spinning the water out in small batches. I have a bucket that I will be using for the actual scour, and then I also have a collapsible bucket that I have used for scouring as well. I know that I want to heat up my water. I don't want it to be too hot, but I want it to be consistent. So the water temperature that I'm going to shoot for is about 125, 130. So give me just a second to prepare this fiber, and then we will get ready to start washing. Because I'm filming, I am doing this inside today, also because it's about to rain and it's brutally hot out there. I would typically do this outside. Opening up the fibers a little bit before you scour also helps to get the water and the scouring soap in there. So here's an example of a second cut that's really too short to work with. I'm just gonna put that aside. I'm primarily looking for the long locks. And not all of the tips will come off, and that's okay. These little pieces I definitely want out. So my basket is just about full. I'm going to put a little bit more in there. I do want to talk, I also have a flick carder if I don't want to pull the tips off with my fingers or want to just open up those tips a little bit more. A flick carder is a great tool for that. If you don't have a flick carder, again, I'm all about the inexpensive tools. This was a dollar store pet brush, and it works just as well opening up those tips. Actually, I think this one works just a little bit better. But again, I'm getting rid of the little neps, those little pieces that are going to be so hard to work with. and I'm opening up. These are such beautiful little locks. So here, and it just opens up and pulls off those tips that would have come off anyway. I actually like this little pet carder better than the flick carder because it's much easier on my hands. I cannot tell you how many times I've stabbed myself and bled using that because they're sharp. Oh, it just opens right up. And I don't want to overfill the bucket. I think that was another mistake. I'm sharing mistakes that I've made, so hopefully you will not make them as well. One of the other things that I have noticed that I have done when scouring, I've put too much wool in the vessel that I'm using to scour. So for this one, I am just going to loosely fill it up. So the water will be able to move around. So this is a nice little basket ready to be scoured. Now all of this is, again, it's waste. And I know it's sad. It's almost like, oh, but I want to use everything. It's just falling apart in my hands. It's not worth using. So this is also the type of thing that perhaps, honestly, I don't remember where I got this. Oh yeah, I do. This one I do, that one I don't. It's possible that this fleece wasn't fully skirted, and so this is just those extra bits that would have been skirted and thrown away anyway. Soya sheep are very small, so you're not going to get a lot of wool with each fleece. So I'm not going to overfill my bucket. My bucket is now ready to be dipped, so I'm going to get the scouring water ready. Like I said, hot water. The preferred soap that I like using is Unicorn Power Scour. And I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons. Which is about I'm not measuring, it's about a 2-second pour. And I do have a thermometer. So I have a nice fluffy filled basket, and here we go. And of course the basket sank and the fiber didn't, but that's okay. This is one of my favorite tools for scouring. Let's go. The nice thing with that, with flick carding it a little before putting it in there, the water is not nearly as dirty as I thought it would be. Some of the dirt's already left out. So I'm going to just let that sit for 15 minutes, and then I will come back, drain it, rinse it, spin it, and let it dry. All right. It's been 15 minutes in between 120 and 130 degree water. And I'm going to just lift this out for a second and put it over here. So actually the water is not that bad. I was expecting black water, so this fiber was much cleaner than I thought. I think probably one of the most important things is maintaining consistent water temperature. So now we're going to wash So as you can see, there is a lot of soap down there. So we're going to be doing some rinses. Okay, now that it is washed and completely rinsed, I am going to take what I have and put it in my spin dryer. Spin dryers are amazing. There are a number of different makers. This is key. You want to make sure that you get this guy on there as well. Such a little tiny amount. I know it's such a small amount, but it's so important getting all of that extra water out. And it's a great way to double check and make sure that you have all of the soap out. I'm looking to make sure that my water runs clean. So I will spin. Yay, it's clear. And this cuts down on the drying time as well. So this is a Panda. Ninja makes one. There are a couple other spin dryers out there. Salad spinners work great too if you want some upper body. So I just go until there's no more water. I'm going to take out my little protective piece there that's so important. And this is our clean, I need someplace clean to put it. Yay, okay. So here is our clean fiber. Oh, it's gorgeous. I didn't felt it, it didn't shrink. I still have the locks. Now it just needs to dry. And I will do the processing. So I'm going to keep going. That was just a small sample. I'll keep going through the rest of this, and I will do bigger batches. I can do bigger batches in the big tub. I just wanted to show this very small and contained way to do it. So small batch processing is completely doable in a small space. So I'm going to set this off to the side. Okay, I think we're just about done. I have my fiber sample in the back drying. Mostly I just wanted to showcase how easy it is to scour wool in your kitchen in a small space if you do it in small batches. I certainly wouldn't want to do this with 5 or 6 pounds, but when you're looking at the 4 ounces, which is the minimum requirement for the Shave 'em to Save 'em, processing 4 ounces in your kitchen is certainly doable. I also wanted to talk a little bit about how dirty scouring fiber can be, which is one of the reasons why I have come to love aprons. As you can see, I've got a few hanging back there. I use aprons when I spin. I absolutely use aprons when I scour because it's a lot easier to throw one of these in the wash than one of my vintage dresses. So you also have had the opportunity to see all of the Shave 'em to Save 'em breeds that are currently in the program, as well as the newest edition, Soya. I was really looking forward to processing and getting in and playing with that. So thank you so much for joining me today as I did that. As always, thank you for tuning in. Happy scouring. Oh, I almost forgot. If you do scour any of these or have an opportunity, or if you have any questions or additional comments, please feel free to chime in. I do love reading them. Now I'll say it. As always, happy scouring.